Good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting of the North Applications Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Reggie Lowbury, the Committee Chairman. For those of you who are familiar with this, you'll know how it works. I will explain it for those who may not be. Can I do the usual administration first, please? Can I have apologies for absence?
Got apologies from Councillor Radia with Councillor Yarrow substitute.
Any declarations of interest? Minutes of the meeting 14th November are in the bundle. Can I take those as agreed? Thank you. There are no matters notified in advance or as urgent. We will be taking the agenda as published by the Head of Planning last week. All items are public and in Part 1. There's one correction to the front sheets of the report. That is that item 14 is in fact a refusal report. That is clearly what is stated in the report, but the front sheet does show it as an approval. That is earmarked by officers for refusal. Okay. A warm welcome to anyone who's following this on the Council's YouTube channel. For the benefit of the audience, the cameras face this way, so everyone around this table is visible. I would ask that everybody speaks clearly into their microphones so that, again, it is audible to those who are trying to follow it, not in this building. Members of the public cannot be seen on the recording, apart from those of you who've chosen to speak tonight, and when you speak at the table, you will be visible on the recording. And again, I would also ask you to speak clearly into the microphones so it is captured. Standard health and safety, if the fire alarm goes off, we're not expecting a fire drill, so therefore we will be evacuating the building. The main exit is the doors you came in, and you would go through the next set of double doors, and there's a spiral staircase in front of you, and that is normally the best way out. There is another entrance in the corner behind me, but the officer team won't be hanging around, so therefore they will assist rapidly to get everybody out. Can I ask, please, all mobile phones are switched off or at least to silent? That does include those who are partaking in the meeting at this end. In terms of the meeting, officers will present each item. That is in addition to the written report and plan packs that the members have already had for getting on for a week now. There is an addendum to tonight's meeting, and officers will refer to it during the meeting, so that updates the report or reports. It doesn't apply to everything, but it applies to some. For the first three items where there is a petition, petitioners get 5 minutes to address us. Applicants or their agents get 5 minutes, and any ward councillors present, although there are none I can see in the audience, and I'm not expecting any tonight, would also get 5 minutes. You get 4 minutes on a green, a minute on amber, and you get to red. We will stop you, or I will stop you. Members may choose to ask questions of anybody who presents to us. Now, don't take it personally either way. If they ask you questions, they're just trying to seek clarity of what you've said. If you raise any new planning matters that we're not previously aware of, we will take those at the end so we don't take them out of your speaking time. In terms of the voting members of committee tonight, and someone's reversed the order of this, so I've got to rethink my speech. I'll start on my far right. Councillor Tuckwell, Councillor Higgins, Councillor Hagger, Councillor Yarrow, then Councillor Flynn, and then working down the table on this side, Councillor Oswald, Councillor Hansapuri, and Councillor Farley. Those of you who can add up will work out that there's 8 of them. Therefore, if they divide equally, we get a tie, and in which case you then find out how I vote. Other than that, I don't join in the voting process. The officer team tonight, Alan Tilley is our highways officer, Matt Kalashevsky is our planning team manager and will be presenting tonight's reports. James Rogers, the head of planning, officers advice as usual. Luke Taylor from Democratic Services is our clerk and is always grateful for any feedbacks on orange forms that you give him. And they are on the desk in the corner. And Glenn Egan is our legal advisor. I don't think it will arise tonight, but for a point of absolute clarity, the rights to address the committee are, as per the report and as I have set out, there isn't a running debate between the floor and committee, because that is not the way it works. Okay, I'm going to go straight, please, to item 6, 16 the Glen Eastcote, which is on page 7 of the agenda. Matt, will you explain this one to us?
Thank you, Chairman. This application seeks permission for a single-storey side rear extension and the conversion of the roof space to habitable use to include a rear dormer window, 2 side roof lights and 1 front roof light. It is important to note that revised plans were received on the 12th of October and the size of the extensions were reduced from that originally submitted, and a further amendment was received on 23rd of November, removing a side dormer window. I'll just take members through the slides. As you'll see, 16 the Glen is located in a cul-de-sac. The application site comprises of a modest size detached bungalow with a rounded front bay and tall chimneys set in a cul-de-sac of similar bungalows on the northern side of the Glen, which is located within the Eastcote Park conservation area. I'll just take members to the photos so you can see the property in the centre there. This is the rear of the property, how it looks at present. The front again with the adjoining property there and its front dormer window. Side dormer. It should be noted that this side dormer window was built before the area was designated as a conservation area. Again, this is the front of the property. You can see number 16. This is where the single-storey side extension will be. So you can see the very oblique angle from which it will be partially visible. I'll just take members through some of the other photos of the rear. Again, there's that side dormer and the large chimneys. If I take you back to the plans, just so you can see what is being proposed. That's the existing plans. The proposed plans, you'll note side extension, single storey, and a rear extension, single storey, sorry, Councillor. You also see the rear dormer window and a 2 side and 1 front roof light. It is considered that the proposed development would, on balance, preserve the character and appearance of the original dwelling, as well as the Eastcote Park Estate Conservation Area. And in terms of the impact on neighbours, although the proposed development would be built along the shared boundary line with number 15, the Glen, the size, scale and design of the extensions, as amended, is not considered to cause any undue loss of residential amenity to the occupiers of the dwelling in terms of loss of light, loss of outlook or overshadowing. The proposed development will include windows and doors on the front, rear and side elevations of the property. The windows and doors on the rear elevation of the property will face the rear garden of the application site and will not overlook any of the neighbouring properties. The windows on the front elevation have an outlook of the general street scene and therefore will not directly overlook into any of the neighbouring properties. The windows on the side elevation will serve an ensuite bathroom, and therefore will not directly overlook into any of the neighbouring properties. As a result, there will be no issues regarding overlooking or breach of privacy upon any of the neighbouring occupiers. I'll just take members to the addendum sheet. The first point on it refers to the Conservation Officer's comments. I'll just read this out, and I'm sure you've read it, but I'll just read it out for clarity. The report under the Conservation Officer comments states that all of the Conservation Officer's concerns have been addressed. This is not actually correct. A further reduction to the ground floor extension has been requested. If I just show members exactly what is being sought, so I'll show you on the screen behind you because I have to draw it with the red pen. Literally, they want that bit, or suggesting this bit of the extension, this rectangle, is removed. However, planning officers consider that this aspect of the proposals does not cause harm to the character and appearance of the conservation area. Officers also consider it's important to note that the changes to the scheme have removed architectural features that do not already exist in the immediate street scene, such as the side dormer, where single-storey rear extensions are not an unusual feature of this conservation area. The reference in the Conservation Officer's comments in the report to a possible accessibility issue from the rear steps is not backed by the Council's Access Officer and is not considered to be a matter of concern. Should a future owner wish to adapt the property to be fully wheelchair accessible, any changes would be judged on their merits. There's also a couple of points that are not actually on this addendum that have come to light. Firstly, we have received also an objection from the Eastcote Conservation Panel. The objection raised was to the scheme as originally submitted, and it has been significantly altered since. And another couple of points. Condition 2 on the report on page 12 refers to planning drawing number revision D, it should actually be revision E, which is a drawing you're looking at here, is revision E. Also, the description of development on page 7 refers to 3 side roof lights, or actually 2. For the reasons summarised, it is recommended that the application be approved. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Did you also need to amend the date of that plan in condition 2? Because it says 12th October, it should be 23rd November, shouldn't it?
Correct.
Yep. Okay. Just make sure I had all the bits before we start. Okay, the petitioners for this one, please, whoever's speaking. If you press the button on the middle of the microphone as you're ready to start, we will start the timers at this end.
Is this working?
Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Chris Head. I'm representing the residents of the Glen. They have signed a petition objecting to this development on the basis that it is out of character with a conservation area and the other buildings within the Glen itself. I have made a few notes for myself about saying that this is one of few London stock bungalows. I think it was suggested it was red brick in the report on the estate, and the last time a London stock bungalow was built on the estate, they built it with yellow bricks as opposed to London stock, and they got away with it to a certain degree. I'm just concerned that if this did go ahead, that they should be made to get the same London stock bricks to match the building. The other objection is to the Velux windows at the front and to the side in the roof, plus the side one on the extension. They all overlook, the ones on the side overlook number 17, taking away direct views from next door. The one at the front, I believe on the reports, says the front roof lights should be removed. That was the conservation officer's remarks in there. It's visible. All the Velux windows are visible from the street, so take away the architectural view of the Glen itself. The side window on the extension facing number 17 is not obscured in any way, although partially blocked by a side fence. If that fence was removed, it would have direct visual views of number 17's patio area, which I would say was unacceptable again. Is there anything else? Sorry. Is there anything else you want me to mention about?
The fact that
Sorry.
The fact that it says in the report that the windows and doors on the rear extension just look over the rear garden, but they don't.
Yeah. So I could say, to press it up, turn it off.
Right, leave it,
Yeah, fine. Yeah. To take away these objections about the Velux windows is to actually move them to the other side of the building, other side of the roof, that is not actually facing number 15, but is on that side of the building, where the dormer that was to be installed is no longer there. So we are offering an alternative there if this does go ahead.
Yeah, but we want that.
Yeah.
That side window on the extension.
Yeah, but we do want the rear side window on the downstairs extension removed completely. They do have large doors at the back that give plenty of light, and I can't see the actual reasoning for that window to be needed.
Do you want to talk about the skylight window on the side extension? The dome one.
Oh yeah. Just one other thing. We've got the skylights on the extension in the corner. We're not sure if that's a dome or if that's a flat skylight. That's very unclear on the plans. And consequently, if it's a dome, we object to that also, as that would be in the far left, in the corner on one side. There's a Velux window.
Yeah.
We'd need more clarification on that one.
Okay, I think you've got to time. Do members have any questions? I know, sorry, we've been working at this end, but do members have any questions? No? Okay, thank you very much indeed. Is there anyone here on behalf of the agent or the applicant for this one? You wish to talk, please? Could you just confirm your name?
My name's Meany. I'm the actual owner of the bungalow. I'm sorry, I'm unprepared because I didn't expect to speak because I wasn't told we were invited to. There wasn't going to be objections, but I'd just like to say that obviously regarding the bricks, we're going to try and match it with stocks. It'll be London stock. It'll be close to what we can actually source to be exactly, if they still make them. I don't know if they still make them. Regarding the roof lights or the Veluxes, they're obscured as far as I'm aware on the application. We did take out a dormer looking the other side, and we've reduced it substantially as a result of the feedback we got, negative feedback. Most of it projects out the back, which I understand isn't necessarily an intrusion. Next door, it's not overlooked by anything on the ground floor. It's on the same level, so I can't see an objection there. I think we've compromised more than... We actually went in to see the conservation officer and the planning officer before we put the application in with a view of reducing the amount of complaints we would receive so we wouldn't have to waste time. That was in January. We've since then gone back after comments, after reflections and all this, and we've taken off the whole of the rear, we've taken off the side, we've taken off the dormer, which were all originally given positive feedback from both the conservation and the planning department. I think we've compromised, and we will obviously want to try and reflect the manner of the development in itself. That's one of the reasons we wanted to move there. But so I think we've done all we can, and hopefully we'll review it positively.
Do members have any questions? No. Okay. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to, before I open this one for debate, I'm going to ask Matt to come in and perhaps pick up the issues that were raised. I'll see if I can tick them off, as you do, by the petitioners, just to give us some clarity.
Okay. In terms of the issue about the London stock brick, we can tighten condition 3, the materials condition, to include the wording for London stock brick. That's,
thought you might.
in terms of the obscure glazing issues raised, condition 5 actually requires the windows facing 15 and 17 to be obscure glazed, and also as the...
Is that all of them?
It says the windows, all the windows facing number 15 and 17 have to be obscure glazed, yes.
Okay.
So I was just going to say, we could expand that condition so it's absolutely clear that it refers to all of the window openings.
Yep. Okay.
And if I could just add, on the drawing, it actually does put, the Velux windows are obscure glazed. It does actually say that.
Yes, it is.
It's quite small, but it does say
I was aware that was there. The conservation officer wasn't happy with the Velux on the front. If you're taking their comments on page 8, the planning officer's happy with that.
What the conservation officers often say about Velux windows is that they request that we specify that what's called a conservation type roof light. What that means, the difference between a conservation type roof light and a non-conservation type is the conservation type ones are more flush with the roof, and the the conservation type ones are flush with the roof. The non-conservation roof lights sit proud, and therefore they don't look so harmonious. So what I was going to recommend is that an additional change to the materials condition, as well as the London stock brick, that it references that it has to be conservation type roof lights. In my view, with that change, the front roof light would be acceptable.
Thanks, planning officers. Somebody going to start me off? Councillor Haggard, do you want to start, and then I'll bring in Councillor Higgins.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just taking into account, I'm really pleased that we're going to look for the London stock, and that's going to go in, and also with the windows. So thank you for bringing that up too on the Eastcote residents. One of the things I just wanted to check as well was the extension, because obviously the new plans have gone in. I can see the new plans have addressed quite a bit. It's not quite clear on there. Can you just give me the details of actually the size? So we've got one here saying that the extension was reduced, in size, and then a further amendment was received on the 23rd. What that size would be, and also the further reduction to the ground floor extension that had been requested on the Conservation Officer's report. So could you just run through that for me,
Yeah,
please?
absolutely, Matt, please.
Yep. In terms of the depth, I believe it's 3.3 metres deep. The section that the Conservation Officer suggested being removed is literally along there. So it's about 1 metre deep, maybe a couple of metres wide. Officers don't, whilst we note the Conservation Officer's comments, we don't think it's necessary from our point of view. It won't be visible, and in terms of any impact on the character of the conservation area, we don't think it will have any, and certainly if it was refused on that point, we don't believe we could justify that at appeal.
And in terms of 3.3 metres, that is in relation to HDAS, which I see outside me.
We would certainly allow up to 3.6 metres, and in some cases on a detached property 4 metres. Obviously this is in the conservation area, so that doesn't mean we in any way encourage people to go to the maximum, but but the 3.3 metres is certainly within the HDAS thresholds, and in terms of number 15, the properties are heavily splayed, so it's not the impact is definitely reduced because of the configuration of the properties.
Thank you, Chairman. Really, officers have picked up the things that I would have said about materials. Materials seems to be the biggest problem we have on this application. I think this is regarding sort of bungalows, this is quite restrained, and I do applaud the architect to doing that. The only things I do have some concerns about is I'm not very clear whether the roof is crowned or it's not. Obviously, we've seen the internals there is reflecting that it is a crowned roof, but then the drawing to the side is not saying that it is crowned. So I just need a clarification on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. The drawing here shows that it's not actually crowned.
Okay, brilliant.
Yeah.
One other final thing is obviously we have all the conditions here for materials, but I would like some materials on the tiles. If you look at the other bungalows, one thing is that the roof tiling, I know it says surfaces, I just want to make sure that surfaces include
Yeah, I think what we will do, given that is a valid concern, by the way, we'll ask the head of planning in a moment, but we'll change the materials condition. We want London stock brick, we want the tiles. Yeah, we'll ask for the samples to come in.
That'd be fantastic. And the other thing is that just
because we have a condition, as you well aware.
I know the owners here anyway, but just to say that there is available dyeing systems for bricks as well, so you have a really good chance of actually getting something quite matched.
Yeah, well, what we'll do this time, we'll make sure instead of that standard condition that's in there, if we use the enhanced one, needs samples.
And on that, I would go with officer's recommendation.
Okay, can I just summarise the proposed changes, because there are rather a lot of them for a relatively short report. Condition 2 has been amended by officers to say revision E with plan dates of 23rd November. Condition 3 will be amended to request samples, but specifying London stock brick and conservation style roof lights. Condition 5 will be amended to make it absolutely clear that all of those side windows are going to be obscured. Yeah, Oh, sorry, I missed tiles, correct. Yeah. So subject to that little lot, you have proposed it. Thank you, Councillor. Could I have a seconder? Councillor Oswald?
Yeah, I'm happy to second that with those changes, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favour, please show me. Thank you. That one is approved. I now move to item 7, 60 Long Lane, Ickenham, page 17 of your reports.
Thank you, Chairman. 60 Long Lane. The application seeks planning permission for the demolition of the existing detached dwelling and the erection of a two-storey building with habitable roof space to create 7 two-bed self-contained flats. The proposal also includes bin and cycle stores to the side and car parking to the front, with the relocation of the vehicular crossover and private amenity space to the rear. To take members through the plans. Apologies. You can see the site here, 60 Long Lane, and again, and the existing floor plans, existing elevations, and again existing elevation, and then you have the proposed there, which is considerably bigger than what is there at the moment. If I just take you through to the photos first, just to show you what the house looks like at the moment. Isn't working. There we go. There's the house from the front. That was the rear elevation, I believe. Front. Oh no, that is the front as well. Sorry. And just to show you some of the relationship to the adjoining properties. The back garden is quite overgrown. Apologies. The application site is a large rectangular plot comprising a large attached dwelling situated on the eastern side of Long Lane. The existing property has been extended to the side. Let me just go back to the elevation. To the side in the past, which has resulted in it spanning the entire width of the site at ground floor. It also benefits from a large porch addition to the front. It is characterised by projecting gable to the front, finished with Waney edge timber cladding to the gable end. The site is located within the Ickenham Village Conservation Area. In terms of the proposals, let me just take you through to the proposals. So we've got the existing house there, as you can see, and this is the proposed elevations, quite considerably bigger, and you've got the floor layouts, which have 7 two-bedroom flats. The proposed development, by virtue of the design, scale and bulk, is considered unacceptable and would be out of keeping with the character and appearance of the street scene and the neighbouring area. Given the inadequate separation distances of the building to the properties at the rear, it is also considered the proposal would result in the loss of amenities to the adjoining occupiers by virtue of loss of privacy. The proposal also fails to provide adequate living accommodation for future occupiers, contrary to Hillingdon Local Plan 2012. If I just take members to the addendum. Bear with me 1 second. Oh, there it is. Yeah, it's just to clarify that the proposal is for 7 units and not 8 units, as is incorrectly referenced in some sections of the report.
And the addendum.
And the addendum sheet itself, yes. Do apologise for that. For the reasons summarised, it is recommended that the application be refused. Thank you.
Thank you. Petition for this one, I have Jill Dalton, if that's up. If you press the button on the middle of the microphone and it will light up red.
Good evening. This is our petition against the proposed platted development at 60 Long Lane. I'm Jill Dalton, Chairman of the Ickenham Residents Association, which represents some 3,000 plus paying member households within Ickenham, and in this case particularly those in the surrounding properties to the sides and behind 60 Long Lane. We thank you for the opportunity to address our concerns to you directly, even though we have already submitted reasons for our objection. We are pleased to note that this inappropriate development is recommended for refusal by the planning officers, as it contravenes so many of the stated policies of London Borough of Hillingdon. I do not propose to reiterate all of the technical matters referred to in both the Residents' Association and the neighbours' objection letters, but I do wish to highlight the following particular concerns of the residents, matters that they care sincerely about. The proposed block of flats is a gross overdevelopment on this site because of its size, scale and bulk. It would have a significantly adverse impact on the street scene. The building would be close to the property boundaries and therefore overlook neighbours' properties intrusively, impacting on their privacy. It leaves inadequate amenity space and is not in keeping with the green openness of houses and gardens within the conservation area. It's just so important to us that the open gardens associated with the large detached houses typical of this area be preserved. The proposal does nothing to preserve or enhance the conservation area and indeed would remove a characterful property that is in keeping in many ways and replace it with a block of flats completely out of character. Concreting over more and more of Ickenham is visually awful and unsafe in a flood risk area, although I accept this isn't a particular flood risk area. Residents are acutely aware of capacity, traffic and parking around Ickenham, and multiplying the number of cars in a flatted development as compared to a family home is of particular concern. There is little demand for yet more flats in this area. It has taken almost 2 years for the nearby flats to sell. Residents are more than keen that this property be retained as 1 or even 2 family homes, improved with sympathy to the surrounding area. In conclusion, we trust that you will reject this inappropriate development that may well continue the destruction of Ickenham's important conservation area. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Do members have any questions? No? Thank you very much indeed. The agent for this one, Jeff Gillette.
Good evening, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you this evening. I am Jeffrey Gillette, Chartered Architect, and I act for Green Gable Homes Limited, and have prepared the scheme you see before you tonight. I've read through the report that's before you tonight, and I think there's some inconsistencies in there which I would like to draw your attention to. And to assist me in this, I've prepared, I've done an extract of the submitted street scene, which is on the screen now, which I'd like to use to illustrate where I think the inconsistencies lie. This is the proposed development of flats, 7 two-bedroom flats. The neighbouring properties on either side. One of the concerns was the gapping between the buildings, which we have shown. It doesn't show very clearly on the illustration on the wall there, but I think it's much clearer on here in colour that this is the area of enlargement of the building over and above the dotted line, which takes this form in the street scene. So the gapping is not affected by the development apart from these very small areas here. So this is something I'd like you to take into consideration when you read in the report that the proposed development is bulky. The other thing I'd like to stress is that the height of the building is the same. Something that's acknowledged in the report, that there's no increase in ridge height. So, in effect, the profile of the proposed building in the street scene is very similar to what is the existing situation. Comme ça. So, here's the existing building, and this is the gap, and the other gap. And on the other hand, we have this gap and this gap, which is pretty consistent. On this is, I think, quite important to point out to you. The other issue raised was the character of the area, and it states in the report, in the comment made by the Conservation Department, that the area is predominantly detached houses, which is, for this stretch of the road, not correct. This street scene is the existing street scene and stretches from Court Road to Milton Road. This is roughly halfway between the two side roads. So this is a stretch of Long Lane which you could say was in isolation to the rest of Long Lane. And you can see clearly that half of the road is flats and half is detached houses. So to say it's predominantly detached houses, I feel, is inconsistent. Factually, I think it's wrong for this stretch of Long Lane. If 50% of the frontage is taken over by flats. So this leads me to question whether the character of the area is affected to the degree which is suggested in the report in terms of height, bulk and character. And the other issue which has been raised is the value of the building within the conservation area, the existing building. This has been highlighted by Jason Kennedy, who was employed by our client to prepare a heritage statement for the building, and he came to the conclusion it made no contribution in the positive contribution to the conservation area. The council's outside consultants came to a different conclusion. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion. You have the photographs before you. You've seen the building. I think the extensions to the building spoil the building, particularly the front extension, which is ugly, in my opinion. But as I say, everybody's entitled to their own opinion, and I think you should make up your own minds, and you obviously will make up your minds. And if you see it in the flesh, it's probably quite flattering, this photograph. And really, that's all I've got to say, and I hope you take my comments into account.
So you've run out of time anyway.
Okay.
Do members have any questions? Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your presentation. You're essentially asking this committee to override the report of an officer, which is a very detailed report, and actually approve this application. You've provided us with a drawing which we're looking at from quite a long distance, and we don't have any figures for. So what I'd like to ask you is, do you have any figures for the gapping between the property that's being proposed and the adjoining, the neighbouring properties to either side, and is that gap as large as any of the other gaps in the street scene that you're presenting to us? You haven't given us any figures whatsoever, so I'm not sure how we're supposed to make a judgment on that. So can you confirm, are the gaps either side less or greater than the other gaps on that street scene image that you provided?
The existing gaps with the building are 1 metre, the proposed gaps on the proposed building are 1 metre to either side boundary. So we have a metre gap on either side. The side wings of the building are predominantly single storey with a pitch roof. The existing building has no gaps. The buildings are built hard on the boundary. There's physically no gaps between. The extension on the left has a gap between the extension and the building, which has been filled in, which is a very strange sort of structure filling in that almost detached building, but it's not quite. And the garage on the left is hard on the boundary. So that's the situation as it stands. The only difference between our proposal and this proposal is that we're doing away with the flat roofs by putting a pitch roof on, which I think is an enhancement. And that's the only additional bulk you're getting, which is closing down the gap.
Okay. Do members have any other questions? Nope. Thank you very much. Could you just turn the microphone off before you leave the table? Thank you. Right, who's going to start me out? Councillor Oswald and Councillor Higgins, then I'm not sure Councillor Yarrow was indicating. No, you weren't indicating. Oh dear. Councillor Oswald.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. Yeah, I don't know whether or not this would take us over the 10% cap on flatted development in this road. Probably doesn't. I haven't seen it in a report anywhere, Matt, so I'll assume that it doesn't. The report says what it says, and it is what it is. This is a nice avenue of houses, and I don't think that it needs this block of flats. And on page 27, it just sums it up in 707, impact on the character appearance of the area. Also, the conservation officers raised significant concerns, this is on the same page, over the scale and design of the proposed building. Like I said, Chairman, I think it is what it is, and I'm going to move the officer's recommendation.
Okay, I'll hold 10 seconds in case anybody has any other queries, but I'm not sure they will. Councillor Higgins?
No, I don't really have. I mean, look, yeah. Whether it's flats or not, I think really for me is irrelevant, because this is a big site. Something's going to happen on it. I agree with that. This is just overdeveloped. Full stop. Bulk. Everything is just ridiculous. And to then sort of say that the gap between the house is just, the depth of it is just enormous. So I wouldn't even contemplate this. So on that, I will second John's thing and go with officer's recommendation.
Are there any other views that people want to put on the table? Okay. We are proposed and seconded that we refuse for the 4 reasons in the officer report. All those in favour of refusal, please clearly show me. Thank you. That one's refused. I now move to 51 Wheeland Road, item 8, page 33. Those who are familiar with our committee will know we've seen this one once or twice before. It wasn't deferred on the 19th of June 2020, though. It would be a little bit far ahead. It was the 19th of June 2018. Whoops, yeah, well, the head of planning day just spotted it, so you're all right. Yeah, but what about in the very top? When you're ready to take this one, are you primarily focusing on the basements? Yes. Just for clarity, we are primarily focusing on the basement because that was the issue that caused the deferral, so that's where we're going to focus our time. Yeah, well, yeah, I just want to make absolutely clear that's what we're up to.
Thank you, Chairman. The application seeks planning permission for the variation of condition 2 of the previously approved planning application for the erection of various extensions. The proposal substitutes the approved plans to provide alterations to the first floor windows on the front side elevations and, more importantly, the enlargement of the basement area. If I just take members through the drawings, existing proposed layouts, I'll just get to the pertinent drawings. You'll recall this is what the house is going to look like. This is the actual basement. Now, what we have received is this drawing, which clarifies a number of matters. You may recall that there were the proposal was for a basement, there were 3 separate applications we're actually looking at. The green that you can see here was the basement that was approved in 2015. I'm not sure if members can see that. The blue line, which goes all the way down to here, was the basement that was approved at appeal in April of this year, and this is the basement that we are, it has been, I've checked. It's been allowed, I double checked. I've actually got the appeal decision with me, so it's actually been allowed, this blue basement now. I'll pass that to the head of planning just for his... so just for clarity for members, the actual basement itself is up to this point here, up to this line, and this is an open courtyard, so they can come out of their basement into an open subterranean sort of courtyard, and then walk up the steps into their garden. If I just get the plan, so just for clarity, in terms of the basement areas, the basement that was approved in 2015, the green line, had a floor area of 164 square metres. The blue line here, which has been allowed as appeal, I believe, was 296 square metres. And the basement that we're considering here up to this point, which is the actual basement itself, is 305 square metres. So it's 9 square metres larger than what was previously approved. You've also got, for clarity I will explain, the courtyard there, the basement courtyard, is, as shown on the plan, 60 square metres. So in total you'd have 365, albeit the actual basement itself comes up to this point. Just to show members I've got other drawings. This is the extent of the basement. It's got one light well at the front, and basement extends to this point. Again, this plan on here isn't all that clear, but if you can see, there's a slight difference in colour here. So this, up till this point here, is the depth into the rear garden of the basement as previously approved. This element here is the additional bit of basement, and then you've got the sort of subterranean courtyard that then leads into the garden. This drawing is the scheme that's been allowed to appeal. You'll see that the basement extends quite considerably into the garden. The back garden is to the left of the drawing, and here there's in some comments received from residents and from the GRA, questions or a comment that this is actually a light well. I've double checked the plans and I can actually show members. This is again the 2016 scheme as allowed at appeal. They're not actually light wells at the front, they're like planters. I've double checked this. For reference, the light well to the front that is being proposed, bear in mind this isn't the actual house, but just for reference, is actually going in this place. So appearance wise, I don't think it's too dissimilar to what's already approved. This, for reference, is a 2015 approval. Again, with the basement, you will note that the basement does not project so far forward and doesn't project beyond the front wall of the house, but it does project significantly into the back garden. So again, that element has already been approved. I'll take members through the photos. Again, excuse me. The front of the house here, the tree that's being retained, I understand. The front light well will be in this location under that element there. Again, the front of the house. For the back of the house, you will note from the photos that it does actually slope downwards, the garden, and the basement will project outwards beyond this element. And just some more photos of neighbouring properties for context, so members can see. And the only other thing I will just explain, if I just go back to this drawing, is that, again, this goes up to this point. So in terms of people being able to, or future occupiers being able to walk on this, we've already approved that, so it has already been approved. So we're discussing this element here. We've actually measured what the increase or the difference in height is, and at this furthest point here, it's actually 0.7 metres, raised by 0.7 metres. But please be aware that is at this point where, because it slopes down, and at this point, it's at the same. It appears to be at the same height as the existing property. I've got an addendum, some addendum changes that I need to speak about. We have received additional comments from the Gatehill Residents Association, which I understand have been passed to members. We're seeking to amend Condition 8 just to remove certain elements of it that don't apply to developments of this nature. And for the reasons summarised, it is recommended that the application be approved. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry, I was just confusing myself earlier. It was allowed at appeal. Matt Kay has spent all week studying this scheme. I will be quiet and
and let him carry on. Susan Howes, please. You know the format, so.
Good evening. I'm speaking on behalf of Gatehill Residents Association. This is the 9th basement application for this property in 4.5 years, and in that time the MPPF has been updated. Inner London boroughs have learnt from the problems which basement expansion has caused, and here in Hillingdon the council has developed a basement policy in line with the MPPF. I hope you found the handouts useful to clarify the differences between these more recent applications. There are four main areas where we believe this application has a detrimental effect and breaches planning policy. Firstly, harm will be done to the character of this area of special local character. This application proposes to introduce a new feature into the typically arts and craft period properties which characterise the estate. There are no light wells to the front, side or rear of any property on the Gatehill estate, and they do not form part of the character of the area. Light wells are more typically found in inner London boroughs. The appearance of this building and the streetscape will be harmed by their introduction. The sun sets before 6 p.m. for around 6 months of the year, so light pollution generated will alter the street scene, not just in winter months. Additionally, there will be no space left for greenery between the properties, so harming an established characteristic of the estate. The previously approved and appealed basements do not include front and light sidewells. My second point is about the amenity of residents, which will be detrimentally affected. The retractable glass walls across the rear of the basement into the courtyard will allow vast amounts of light to escape via the huge courtyard roof spaces, as well as from the increased and enlarged light wells. This light will originate from as far down the garden as 12 metres from the rear wall of the ground floor. The diagrams on page 2 of the handout show just how much more light pollution is being proposed. Illumination and light spill will harm the appearance of the neighbour's garden setting and will illuminate the neighbour's private rear windows. The previously approved and appeal schemes do not include a basement courtyard. Thirdly, I wish to remind you that planning decisions are not just based on the size of the proposals, but also on where buildings are to be sited and their relationship with existing buildings. It is proposed to fill in the gap between this property and the neighbour number 53. The basement wall would start at the boundary with neighbour number 53. The stability of the neighbour's property is obviously going to be affected. As the gap will be covered in non-permeable materials, there will be no possibility of on-site drainage mitigation and nothing to prevent surface water runoff. The previously approved and appeal schemes do not have permission for a basement right to the boundary. In fact, the inspector added a condition to the new build that no alteration to the dwelling house shall be erected without the grant of further specific planning permission from the local planning authority. Clearly, he felt enough was enough. Fourthly, there is absolutely nothing about this proposal which protects or enhances the natural environment, contrary to the MPPF, which now expects basements to contribute to landscaping and to contribute to biodiversity. These proposed alterations to the basement are contrary to policies BEs 5, 6, 15, 19 and 21. In addition, the senior Hillingdon officers who have written the new basement policy state in writing that, and I quote, Policy DMHD3 is considered to be consistent with the MPPF 2018. I would have thought that as a planning authority you would wish to comply with the MPPF. So to summarise, we believe that 1. Front and side light wells are contrary to the architectural nature of the area and will cause visual harm to the street scene and the character of the area of special local character. 2. The rear light wells, due to their size and location, will cause harm and significant loss of amenity for neighbours. 3. The bulk siting and design of the extended basement will cause harm to neighbours and to neighbour number 53 Whelan Road in particular. 4. The design completely fails to comply with the environmental objectives of the MPPF 2018. We therefore ask you to refuse permission for this application and state the multiple reasons for the refusal in your decision notice. Thank you.
Do members have any questions? I've done a lot of scribbling, so I am kind of there. Okay, thank you for that. Anyone here on behalf of the agent or the applicant for this one? No one's owning up. Fair enough. Right. Don't know who wants to start. Councillor Higgins, I know you'll want to start. Councillor Flynn will want to start in a minute. I'll tell you what. We'll go out to members and then the officers can comment from there. I think that's a fair way to do it. Is that all right?
Thank you, Chairman. Where do I start?
You like it and support the officer's recommendation?
Yeah, that's not going to happen. I think the petitioner actually points out all the real reasons that we affected this development and why I can't support it at all. just because it has a glass roof that removes and comes there, it's still a room. So if we're going to take at the basement, we're going to have to say that it's actually 365 square metres. I mean, when do we stop? Do we have to go further? I mean, are we saying that they could have 2 double stories underneath the property or 3 double stories underneath it? It's got to stop at some point. So for what was allowed by the inspector was 295, but now we've been told it's 296. There's a discrepancy of one, but I mean,
we'll accept it was round about 295.
There's a big difference here, and then obviously we consider the external floor is at 307.40. So officers haven't taken into account the other outdoor area, which has got a glass roof on it, and from that drawing we can see that there's some sort of roofing on it. And then this report then goes on to explain about why the 295 and not about what the difference is changed here. I mean, I just think that some developers just keep pushing their luck, and I think it's now time for us as a committee to actually say, hang on a minute, this is enough. You know, you've had 2 bites of the cherry, you've got away with it, great, be happy with that and move on. There's 2 other things I'm really concerned about, is that they're on the drawing they're saying there's steps from this outdoor underground whatever it is, subterranean courtyard. How steep is that going to be for access up and down those steps to get into the garden? That's one of my points. And the other thing is there doesn't seem to be in this report any plan of if there is a problem with the pool. If there's a problem with the pool in the basement, where is the water going to be pumped out to? If there's a crack in the bottom of the pool and it has to be emptied, where are they going to do that? How's it going to be serviced? Where are the fumes of the chlorine? Have we got ventilation? There's too many ifs and buts here. And for me, I cannot support this. It's just a step too far. So
Thank you for that. Councillor Flynn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A few points. Firstly, I concur with Councillor Higgins around the concerns on the size. My question to officers there is, where is the line in the sand, or perhaps it should in this instance be the line in the clay, going to be drawn around the size? As we've seen, the figures, we've got 295 or 296, and they're looking to add another 10 square metres to that. Where does this stop? So that's my first question. Second question, you've got a tree which we're told is being retained. The officer's report does reference that the developer will need to provide some more information there, but has the tree protection really been looked at by tree officers? Because burrowing into the ground to this extent, I would have concerns about a tree that's nearby. Thirdly, I know a lot of councils like Westminster and Kensington and Chelsea, where these sort of developments are more common, have looked quite closely at the issues around construction of these sort of basements, and there are quite often issues around dust going into neighbours' properties and the environmental impact of that on neighbours. Have we looked at that? I notice there's a condition around mud and that kind of stuff around driveways, but are we looking at the issue of dust when, you know, big diggers are going into the ground on this scale? And my final question is, one of the conditions, if we are minded to approve this, is that the hours of work are 8 till 6. It does seem 8 o'clock, a lot of people on the Gatehill estate are quite elderly. They might well still be in bed at 8 o'clock in the morning, and the idea of being woken up every day by a digger at 8 o'clock, I wonder whether we could move that till 9 o'clock if we were minded to approve this. Thank you.
Can I, in terms of your concerns, 3 of those I'd have in the kind of technical box that if we move towards approval we need to absolutely deal with. Fundamentally, though, you still have a concern with the size of this basement. We'll deal with the fundamental here first, because that will determine where we go with this in a moment or two. Perhaps I'll ask officers to come back in. There's some strong points been made. If I kind of summarise a little bit, around the light wells at the front and side, loss of rear amenity, size and bulk, and obviously there is some reference to potential new local plan, which I know is still meandering its way along. Perhaps its impact on life we might tease out in a moment or two. And also, the other thing I think is important is this courtyard, because 10 square metres is one thing, but then there's another 60 beyond that. So that actually to understand where that factors into calculations, because that's not actually part of the garden, it's still something else, isn't it? So perhaps you could give me some comments, and that might take us forward.
Thank you, Chairman. In terms of basement policies, currently we do not have a basement policy in the UDP. However, in the emerging local plan part 2, it's policy DMHD3, which I think the petitioner referenced. What it actually states, it doesn't limit or give a size limit to basements at all. It just says that schemes should ensure that they do not harm the amenity of neighbours and do not harm the appearance or setting of the property or the established character of the surrounding area, for example, through the introduction of front light bulbs. And officers have reviewed the scheme, and in their opinion, the scheme does not harm the amenity of neighbours, and the front light well, for the reasons I explained in my presentation, i.e. the planters at the front that are already approved, it would be barely visible and would not detract from the character of the area to such a point that we feel that it should be refused.
What about well, the courtyard's a further 60 square metres, if I'm correct. So how does that impact? It's not a basement, but it's not a garden, is it?
No, but again, correct. It's not fundamentally part of the basement, but I do agree. There's no argument it is below ground level. Personally, I haven't seen one of these before, but it's a subterranean. I don't know why they've done it, but a subterranean courtyard.
So will there not be light coming out of that? It must have a glass roof on it, I'm presuming.
Yes.
So there will be light.
There would be, because if you look on the floor plans, if I just scan through them, this appears to be some sort of glazed. Sorry, there's a wall there, but that appears to be glazed. So yes, there would be some light emanating from there, but no more than from the windows at first and ground and first floor levels of the house. So it's, you know, what difference?
Yeah, but you've now got light coming up from the ground as well as ground and first floor.
At ground level, with the fences around the house, around the gardens, what would you really see?
Okay.
You know, it's like if you had a flat roof, single-story rear extension with a lantern roof light on it, you'd have light coming out of it. This is at ground.
That is true, but it wouldn't normally be 60 square.
So far,
I normally have 3 metres, which would rather limit my light pollution, I think. This is slightly bigger than that. I know it's a bigger house than the average house in the borough, but that doesn't matter for a minute. Okay. Has the head of planning got any other commentary or advice to offer us on this one?
Well, I can't think of any reasons by which members would be able to refuse it, given the planning history.
I've got one more comment.
Sorry, yes, there was a couple of questions. One was about the construction of the basement. Condition 11 is a construction management plan. That would address that, in my view.
I think the council suggested you move the hours to allow for the fact that Cahill doesn't get up very early.
Yes, and in terms of the hours are controlled by different legislation, not by us, so we can't, in my view, again, we can't actually alter those. They're by EPU legislation.
I'll come to that debate in a moment. Okay, sorry, Councillor Yarrow, you wanted to come in.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I just think that, looking at the information that we've got, scant as it is, that it was approved for 295 square metres, and it's now gone to 307.4 square metres minimum. It's going to be more with the other bits and bobs that's added on. That is good. That is a good enough reason. How can we say that the person who heard the appeal allowed it for that, but now we're going to allow it for more? Well, we don't want to do that. And also, I don't know whether I misheard the officer. I thought he said it should be refused when it's down for approved. Did I?
No, you did. No reason to justify refusal.
Sorry about that.
I sometimes get brought into these debates of, can I think of refusal reason to help committee? And what I was sort of saying in shorthand is I can't see how you could refuse it given the planning history.
Good, that's difficult, because I mean, at this moment in time, I would think it should be refused.
Okay, let me take Councillor Oswald.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. We didn't like this last time, did we? Well, that's right. And, I mean, planning permission has been granted for what's already been granted, 295, is it? It's on the front.
295, we'll go with
That's
295,
right.
please.
It's on the front sheet. It's a case of, well, I've got that, now I'm coming back because I want some more. And it's about where do you draw the line? I know we don't really have a policy on, because Matt's just said it, we don't have a policy on basement size. It seems to me to be quite a new thing. Big properties in Northwood as well, so I suppose they can do this. I don't know whether we can refuse this or not. I think it's difficult, isn't it? Because it's compliant, isn't it? It's just... I mean, I don't think I can support this, Chairman, but I can't really think of a reason to vote against the officer's recommendation.
You may be not alone in that particular thought process. I saw Councillor Flynn and then Councillor Higgins. I'll go that way down the table.
If I could just finish,
Sorry,
Chairman,
of course.
If we could refuse this because we don't like it, and I don't really agree with this. We've heard what the petitioners have said as well, and I do feel for them. And if we did decide to refuse this, could we find a form of words that would hold up? I don't think it would actually, because of what's already happened at appeal. Thank you, Chairman.
Sorry, Councillor Flynn, then Councillor Higgins.
Straight question to officers. While I appreciate every different application has to be judged on its merits, have we in recent times approved a basement that is of this size or larger in this borough?
Matt says he doesn't know, which is a fair answer. Fair question, yeah, it's a fair question.
We've definitely approved smaller basements. I'm trying to think whether we approved larger basements.
We know we've approved some smaller ones because we've been there a few times, both in Northwood and one or two other places.
Well, this is the problem, Chairman, isn't it? Because we don't have any policy, because it's not beefed up in any way that says we're only going to allow so many square metres, and we haven't done that, maybe we should. Maybe we should have a serious look at this, because I imagine this isn't going to be the first one, because once someone catches sight of this, and word of mouth and everything else, oh, well, we may as well have a crack at this. Look, I don't like it, Chairman, and I would like to refuse it, but I don't know whether we've got strong enough reasons to do that.
Councillor Higgins wants to come in, and then I'm going to bring in the head of planning.
Let me have a go. Yeah, it's bulk. It's very simple. You know, what you're trying to say to me is that it's 307. It's not 307. It's 365. That is basically it's a sunken conservatory. Would we allow another conservatory on this building if it was on ground level? The answer would be no. So it's definitely bulk. And I tell you something, I'd like to have a chance with the inspector, because I think when the inspector sees what was allowed and was granted, and then they've come back for this amount, including up to 365. Please, officers, keep telling me this whole basis of this argument of the report here is all about the 295. You've hooked your hat on to 295. This is not 307. This is 365. That basement area has a roof on it, so it is a basement. A basement means that it has a covered roof. Whether Wembley Stadium is indoor or outdoor, or the car.
We won't do Wembley Stadium tonight,
but
please.
the point is I'm trying to make is that when a warehouse has a roof on it,
yeah, I know. I
it's
take
a
your
warehouse.
Point.
It's not something else. That has a roof. If you want to pass this and you take off the roof, and telling me that a little lantern light, that pollution out of there with glass magnifying the light underneath, will be able to be seen from any first floor building around that area. So I cannot agree with it, and I think the petitioner gave enough reasons for us to trifle with you.
Well, hang on. I'm not necessarily unsympathetic. I just don't know that bulk's going to work for us.
So you could do an approach that effectively the sum of the whole, everything proposed on the site, every bit of hard standing, every bit of building is too much in the area of special local character. And if you took that approach, you'd basically be refusing it on our sort of design policies that seek to protect the street scene in that area of special local character. There's a supplementary thing the petitioner's raising, is I think she's also saying, also refuse it with reference to the basement policy. I just want to explain why that would concern me. The reason it concerned me is that, firstly, it's an emerging policy, so there is an issue at this stage as to how much weighting it has. But also, this is a policy in the future this committee is almost certainly going to use to refuse large basements. And what I wouldn't want is to be losing our very first appeal referencing this policy. And I do think whatever you refuse it for, you're taking a risk. And that taking a risk with your new basement policy and then losing your first appeal with referencing that policy may not be a sensible move. So I'd caution you before you reference this policy, but you could maybe consider the first approach I've mentioned.
Okay, I've heard...
Can I just go back one second?
Yeah, okay, and then I need to bring in one to other members. I've heard extensively from about 3 people. I need to...
The other issue that we said on the previous report about the basement starting on a boundary, was the applicant, the petitioner correct about that? That the previous ones are off the area of the boundary line?
That's a fair question. We'll take that. Then I know the legal officer wants to come in next, so I'll bring him in. Then I want to hear from 1 or 2 other members who haven't said a lot, because I just need to understand kind of where we're flowing with this.
Yeah, if you can see from, I'll refer back to this drawing. Again, blue line is what was approved, and yes, it is closer to the boundaries on both sides.
Not actually on.
But I don't believe it's on. Plus, I'll just point out, as it's stated in the report, that the flooding officer didn't object to this.
No, I was aware of that, so that doesn't particularly help us. Perhaps if I could ask the legal officer who has indicated.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to say I agree with the advice given by the Head of Planning there on your reasons for refusal. The basement policy is emerging. We're not clear what weight can be attached to that at the moment. But the key to, if that policy was enforced, the key would be you have to have a demonstrable harm. We've not really identified that at the moment. May I finish? Thank you. What I would suggest is, if you're looking to refuse, bulk is a subjective decision you're entitled to take. You're entitled to take a judgment on that. It seems to me, if you were to refuse on the grounds of bulk, that is certainly arguable at appeal. I wish I could say we'd win that on appeal, but it's certainly arguable. It's not one of those occasions where I'd say to members, I'm sorry, that argument is completely untenable, I can't run it for you. So, on that basis, I hope that assessed the debate tonight.
Thank you. The Head of Planning was also suggesting that there may be something around the cumulative effect on the landscape and so forth.
Again,
it's subjective,
I would agree with that. From the discussion tonight, members have sincere views about this application, that's quite clear. And you are entitled to substitute your views for those of your officers, provided you've got good reasons to do so there. So my advice would be very clear on the planning basis for refusing this, rather than the emerging policy, which may or may not come to assistance in future applications like this. Thank you.
Okay. Let me bring in those who haven't said a lot at the minute, because I just need to get a sense of where we are. I sense of where probably 2 or 3 of you may be, but there are 8 people around this table. My maths needs to get good in a minute. Right, Councillor Tuckwell, and then Councillor Hagger.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. We're in a bit of a spot here, aren't we? But for me, I think I have to concur with what a couple of my colleagues around the table have said. You know, previous approval for 296, but we're actually talking about 365 in terms of bulk.
So that's giving you problems in approving this?
Yeah.
Okay, that gives me a fair steer. Councillor Hagger, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I mean, I'm in the same here. It's a really dangerous thing putting it through. I think when we start to look at this, and I know legally we're really stuck because we've got no legal implications on it, so I get that. But at the same time, I'm just concerned with the size. It is that bulk that really is the big issue. And if we approve this, we're going to set precedent as we go along. And that is really my main concern out of all of it. We need some legal implication in beforehand, before this goes through.
A couple of members to my left who are sitting there quietly. Are you, where are you on these, guys? Microphone on, please. I need it on the phone.
Well, to be honest, I am a little bit, because if the legal advisor, he said, we don't have any legal stand on this one, if you refuse, then I don't think so we have much choice.
Okay. You're not happy with the application?
Yes, but if legally it is
Okay.
right, then...
No, that's fair. It's a fair view to hold. Spartan, please.
Thanks, Chair. Excuse me. Yeah, I listened to colleagues of what they've said on this. I have to agree. The extent of the depth that's going out into the garden, just well, whatever this feature is, having it covered or uncovered, don't know, but certainly I can't go down the track of approving this. Obviously, the legal issue is another issue. I'd abstain really from my point of view.
Okay. No, I'm just trying to get a sense of the meeting. I mean, I thought I had it, but I need it. Can I ask a question of members? And there's just a logic to this, so flow with me for a moment or two. Obviously, the officer has indicated that one way of overcoming some of the concerns around the light wells and so forth is landscaping. Do members believe that you can landscape this sufficiently to overcome those concerns? No? Could you put your mic on for me?
The only way you can do that is to remove the glass roof at the back. And
then it might not be subterranean courtyard. Then it might be a bigger basement.
But basically, what they're using the heat of the pool to heat up that area so they can grow palm trees and stuff like that. I know. I know what they're trying to do, but and the reason for the glass roof, it is a conservatory. It's not anything else but a conservatory. That's my view. And if legal, on one point, legal has actually said that we do have, if I'm correct, Glenn, please forgive me if I get this wrong. That one of
legal officer's advice.
I'm taking legal officer's advice is that bulk could be one of our issues for refusal. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
So, okay. I think there's two things coming out with this. I think we are being very heavily cautioned that the emerging policy would be extremely risky to use in these circumstances. Members have some concerns regarding, and I think this might be simpler if it was only 9 or 10 square metres. I think it would be a lot trickier if it was only the 9 or 10. The subterranean, whatever we call it, which was where the discrepancy was arising yesterday in between some of the measurements we were being given. So we've got the issue of bulk, which I think we've explored to some depth. We've also got an issue around the cumulative effect of hard-standing light wells and so forth on the conservation area, because there are more of those than there were before.
Through you, Chairman, I would be very cautious about the light wells in the front of the building and even onto the side. Where the light well is an issue is at the rear of the property. Okay, so if we're going to go, we can't go at something that we've already lost on.
No, but we haven't lost on the sides.
No, we haven't lost on the sides, but we have lost on the light.
Yeah,
and that's why officers are very clear about the.
Yeah, no, but I still think there may be. I'm trying to get two in this. Is what I'm up to. I want 2 bites of the cherry here.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a point on the courtyard. There's been some comments that it's covered. I don't think it is, and I think what you're seeing on the drawing here, this element here, is actually a balustrade for the stairs. So I don't think it's covered. There's nothing on the plans, on basement plans, that actually shows it as covered. I thought I'd raise that as a point of clarity. I think it's an open courtyard. Whether that makes a difference to the assessment, that's up to members. But I don't think it's actually covered.
I don't think that's going to affect members. In fact, actually, if it's open, it may actually make the thing worse.
It's on 154 of the plans, page 154.
What do you think?
I think it's a balustrade.
Do you think it's a balustrade? Do you think that's an open courtyard? But it's still a subterranean open courtyard. I don't think that really makes a vast difference.
But in terms of it being, yeah. Just for clarity.
Right. I'm going to move something. The precise wording of these reasons is going to have to be agreed outside this meeting, because there is no way I'm going to ask the head of planning to do his magic now. He's very good at it, but I think I may just be setting him a task that's too great. So I'm going to ask for delegation for the reasons we worked outside and agreed between myself and the Labour lead outside of the meeting, but that the meeting is clear it wishes to refuse this application, the primary reason being bulk, and it would also like to look at if there's a reason around the landscaping of the site, in particular at the rear, but whether the side can be incorporated into that. Have I got a correct sense of where we are?
Quite sure what the second part was there, Chairman. I understand the first part.
In other words, we're looking at, effectively...
Were you looking at mitigating circumstances, or
No, looking at a second refusal reason.
Oh, right, fine. Okay,
second refusal reason that you've already said you don't believe landscape can mitigate that.
No.
I asked that question a few moments ago with quite deliberate intent. So in other words, we're looking at the effect on the area of special local character of the open courtyard, the light wells round the side, and framing as a reason. Yes?
Yeah. So I can help members. So we'd be saying at appeal that the area of special local character has a certain part of its character is the green and verdant nature of it, and effectively the amount of built development occurring is detracting from that.
Sorry, can I also make sure that we do include this other area as part of the basement? It's not a separate area. This whether it's got a roof or it hasn't got a roof, it's still...
No, we're incorporating that. That's part of it.
That's part of the bulk. That's
part of our argument.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
because as I said,
365, not
as I said at the
306.
start of this, the issue I think would be a lot more difficult to sustain if we were only 5% up on what had been agreed before. I think, yeah. Are we okay? Therefore, can I have a proposer on that basis? Thank you, Councillor Higgins, and out of a seconder in Councillor Oswald. All those in favour of overturning the officer report and refusing, please clearly show me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
That's with existing safe policies.
Yeah, that's using existing safe policies. I've got 6 for refusal. Any abstentions? I've got 2. So it's 6 and 2 abstentions. That's still refused. Thank you very much indeed on that one, colleagues. Right. We are running tight tonight. I'm going to take a comfort break on this. I know I don't normally. 9 o'clock, please. Okay, everyone's back in the room. Are we on? Yeah. Okay. We've got two applications at Little Acre, Northwood Road, Harefield. We'll take item 9 first, please. Installation of the mobile home.
Thank you, Chairman. The application seeks planning permission for the installation of a mobile home for the temporary period of 3 years to be used in conjunction with the existing stabling, which accommodates breeding mares and retired aged horses. Site, Little Bourne Equestrian Centre, is located on the south-east side of Northwood Road, to the west of Harefield Reservoir, and comprises a series of farm-related buildings. The farmland covers 21 hectares and incorporates both agricultural and equestrian holdings. The accommodation site lies within the greenbelt. Show members the plans. So here are the various plans. I can't even read them. The mobile home is this area here. It's that section there. The plans are actually the same for the next item, so that's why we've got other areas, but I'll explain that in a second. There's a picture of what it will look like. Although this proposal introduces an individual residential use on the site, which would be considered inappropriate development usually, the evidence submitted with the proposal provides very special circumstances to support the need for the development to provide appropriate care and security for the animals on site. Furthermore, it is not considered that the proposal would significantly increase the built-up appearance of the site to the detriment of the openness of the greenbelt. Furthermore, it would not result in the loss of any residential amenity, given its location. For the reasons summarised, it is recommended that the application be approved. Thank you, Chairman.
Members? Councillor Tuckwell, I'll start with you. Come on, you don't need to be fair.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just a question really around what's the compelling need for it to be temporary and what happens after 2021?
Good question. Matt? I think, why the 3 years?
Yeah. That's what was, I understand that's what was applied for, and that gives us the opportunity to, if they continue to want it after 3 years, they'll have to submit another application, and we can reassess it at that point. It gives us that flexibility. Thank you.
Higgins, have you got another question, or was that your question?
That was my question. I know, but that's fine. No, it's fine. I don't. You know what they do there is fantastic. I fully support that. My question is why is it 3? You know, should it be 2? But we've had. The
answer is that's what's been applied for.
Yeah, that's what's been applied for. I mean, as long as I can see that the building is in keeping, but obviously, Harefield is, as I'm sure the applicant knows, it's a very greenbelt area, so we have to ask these questions.
I think we know.
Obviously, I've been there for a long while, so I just had to ask that question. But as I said, you know, that's fine. You know, and I would approve it. So.
He's proposed
yes,
that, then, Councillor Higgins. Thank you for that. Thank you, Councillor Oswald, for seconding for me. All those in favour, please show me. Thank you. That one's done. Item 10, I think we had the plan of it up a moment ago, which is 4 stables, a storage building and a horse walker. Funny enough, fits with an equestrian use, I suspect.
Actually approved it, but just to make sure that obviously the building of this accommodation area is in the same sort of colour as the rest of the operation, as it were.
There is a materials condition on the
I just wanted to make sure, because that was quite orange.
It is on there. Yeah, go on.
Thank
Sorry.
you, Chairman.
The councillor's interlude.
The second application on this site. Just to go back, planning permission was granted in 2014 for a single-storey building for use as stabling and a tack room. The development subsequently carried out did not fully comply with the approved plans. A separate proposal was submitted to seek retrospective permission for the increase in the site area and stabling as built. This was considered by committee in July of this year and approved. The current proposal is for the inclusion of a further block of 4 stables, a small storage barn and a 4-horse walker. So this is the horse walker in this location. The additional stabling is here, and the proposed store is in this location. Although this extends upon the previously approved buildings, it is considered that the proposed stable building, store and horse walker would appear appropriate in its rural green belt setting and would not detract from the agricultural character and openness of the green belt. And for the reasons summarised, it is recommended that the application be approved. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Higgins, followed by Councillor Yarrow.
We'll go with officer recommendation on this.
And I'll second it.
Oh, thank you very much indeed, gentlemen. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. Done. That one's approved. Right, I move to item 11 Harville Road. This is part retrospective, but we're only considering, I understand, one small portion of this, so just let's be very clear what we're actually dealing with.
Thank you, Chairman. The proposals involve a part 2-storey, part single-storey side rear extension, single-storey side extension and single-storey front extension involving the demolition of an existing garage. This is a part retrospective application. For clarity, this is an amendment to development approved under previous planning permission in January of this year. We'll just take members to the plans to be very clear. The top plan here, front elevation, rear, is what we approved. The bottom one, again, front and rear, is what we're approving. And the only difference, as you can see, albeit the plans have been drawn by a different architect, is this side garage here. So it's not there, and you can see it on, sorry, Councillor Farley, you can see it on the rear there. Point right in your eyes. Blind. 11 Harville Road is a detached 2-storey dwelling. If I take you to the photos, actually, you'll see it's part built already, and just how we came across the fact they've done it. Again, just photos of what's been built. If I can just see a street photo, I can't quite. Again, this is the gap that you can see, and the garage is going here. So you've got the wall there, and the garage is going to go in this location where there was nothing previously proposed. And the current proposal is a relatively small amendment to a previously approved scheme. The addition of the garage to the side will not have a detrimental impact on the character of the dwelling or of the area. For the reasons summarised, it is recommended that the application be approved. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have any issues with this at all, so I'm happy to go with officer's recommendation.
Councillor Higgins got a worried look on his forehead, which worries me.
Part
of the part retrospective. Is there anything else that worries you?
That's another thing. You know, in some minds I feel like I should refuse it, but I can't. But it is a garage, definitely. And
I think if you read the report, that might be quite a loose description of what it is.
Yeah, but I want to make sure that there's no PD rights on that, and they're not allowed to use it as any.
I think it's being used for storage.
Yeah, but no habitable room. And I'll make that.
We take a PD off. Let me have a look. No additional windows or doors, no roof guards, no tree protection, landscaping. No, we haven't.
Well, it doesn't look they really care whether they come back here because they've already continued to do what they want to do. So on that, I would.
Yes, move the PD.
Yeah.
They take the head of planning's view whether it's reasonable to condition that can't become a hab room.
What?
I'm asking the head of planning for a view.
I wouldn't say it's that clear cut because they've got a large sort of driveway area, so it's not going to be due to lack of parking, given the size of the front garden.
Yeah, but they don't call it a garage.
And
they always said they're not using the garage for cars.
Yeah, if that garage door got changed to a window that
was in keeping,
would be really that bothered that we want to then have a further application to consider that?
Yes. Yes, I would.
You might be. I don't know if everybody else is quite so bothered.
So what we're saying is that people can do what they want. No, if it's a garage, it's a garage. If it's a room, a habitable room, then we judge it on that. But I think we can't sort of say that, you know, here we go again. It's just like, oh well, they let them come back and complain about it and do something else again. We have to say what it is. If it is what it is.
I think the head of planning is saying you can, but his guidance is don't.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying.
If I can summarise guidance at this time of the evening.
So what I'm basically saying is, obviously as a committee, if you want to add the standard condition, then you're quite entitled to do that. If they were to challenge it, I'm just saying that the reason for it may not be quite as robust as some members, I think, are implying.
Through you, Chairman, then so be it. At least they'd have to apply, at least they'd have to take it to appeal, and at least they'd have to take We've got to make a stand somewhere. It's easy just to say, oh, well, you know, we'll turn our backs on it because we don't care. We are put that condition in. There's no harm in it. If they want to come back and say it's a habitable room, then the committee can judge it on that when it comes to the committee.
Not sure it has it totally holds water, I've got to be honest on this one. I'd be more concerned if this was somewhere where it was being used as a garage and this would then mean we'd lose the parking, but I'm just not sure. Councillor Flynn.
Wouldn't, you know, if we obviously found out that it was being used for habitable space, would it not be an enforcement item? So
we probably view it as not expedient to necessarily.
The Chairman's touching on my concern here is that are we setting ourselves up for a slight difficulty of, I'm slightly worried that enforcement officers are going to say, well, what's the expediency to enforce if they've got space for 3 cars to the front and they've done matching brickwork and window if they were to say remove the garage door, or perhaps if behind the garage door it's being used for habitable use, if they've got parking for 2 or 3 cars out the front, what's the problem?
Maybe I'm sorry. Through you, Chairman. I feel maybe I'm a bit stupid here. I mean, surely the whole part of this committee is to look at plans before us. If this is a habitable room, then state it's a habitable room. Whether the enforcement officer agrees that whether it should be expedited like because other things. Surely
We are, but I think what the head of planning is guiding in a careful way is that adding an additional condition to this he doesn't necessarily feel is appropriate.
But is the foundations for 2 stories or for single stories? Is he going to come back and then put another roof, another building on the side of it?
Well, then if he does that, he needs planning permission. I think I'd be happy with this one as it stands, but
I don't think we should get bogged down on this, Chairman.
Right. In that case, somebody propose and second me.
Well,
right. Are you going to second?
Yeah, I'll second it. Yeah.
Right.
And we'll see what happens.
And I'll move it forward. Right. Proposed and seconded. All those in favour, please show me. Thank you. And Councillor Higgins against. Right. Are you abstaining? Fair enough. Right. Thank you for that one. Right. The next one I think should be straightforward. Argyle House in Northwood, a Class A1 to a D1 with some side and alterations side and rear elevations. Does that involve taking some windows out? Does anyone need a presentation on this?
Move the officer's recommendation, Chairman.
No, he's moved it, you're going to second it. I like it. I like the speed. I like the speed of this. Right, in that case, all those in favour, please clearly show me. Thank you. Are you all right with the Council Flynn? Yep, that's everybody. Thank you very much. I then get to Willow Farm, Jackets Lane, Harefield. It says Harefield in my report. Can I ask Matt just to present this one, please?
Thank you, Chairman. The proposal is for the permanent use of the land as a gypsy and traveller caravan site. The submission pack includes a site plan and a site location plan. This shows a larger area of hard standing, 6 static caravans, 4 touring caravans, a shed and screening, tree planting, and a new hedge is also shown along the line of the new fencing. So just take members through the drawing. There you can see the caravans, the static caravans and the touring caravans, or the locations for them. An aerial shot, and there you have the site. It's taken by the case officer. If I just perhaps go back to the aerial. Sorry, my pointer's not working. There we go. The application site comprises a 0.25 hectare triangular shaped field located on the south side of Jackets Lane, approximately 700 metres to the southeast of its junction with Northwood Road. It is located within open countryside which forms part of the Greenbelt and the countryside conservation area, and also lies adjacent to a nature conservation site of metropolitan or borough grade 1 importance. In terms of the history, 2 previous planning inspectors did not consider that this site was suitable for a permanent gypsy and traveller caravan site. The harm to the character and appearance of the Greenbelt and the countryside conservation area being too great. An appeal for the permanent use of the site was dismissed by the Secretary of State in 2014. Previously, inspectors were concerned about the local planning authority's lack of assessment of travellers' needs within the UDP and no alternative sites being available in the vicinity, so that the grant of temporary permission would allow time for the local planning authority to progress the local development framework and for appropriate site-specific allocations to be made. The LDF has been progressed and an extension of the existing site has been allocated as shown on map A in designations. The applicant has presented health need details of 2 current occupants, noting the applicants require a suitable and culturally appropriate place to live in order for the families to maintain good health with access to healthcare and education. However, the application fails to justify why these needs cannot be met on an allocated site. The application involves some operational development in that the submitted plans show 6 static caravans, whereas in the past, under temporary consents, there was 1 existing main mobile home on site. The number of mobile caravans does add to the proliferation of structures on the site and would add to its built-up appearance. The application is recommended for refusal as being harmful to the development in the Greenbelt and detrimental to the landscape of the countryside conservation area. 14. For the reasons summarised, it is recommended that the application be refused. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, you have before you a refusal report. The reasons for refusing permanent planning permission are pretty clear. Can I just ask, does anybody have any queries on the items given in that report? Thank you. You're proposing officer recommendation.
I propose it, Chairman. Yeah.
And are you seconding, Councillor Hager? Thank you very much. And, all those in favour of refusal, please show me. Thank you. It's unanimously refused. I now move to the final item of the night, item 14, 197 Field End Road, Pin, although it's colloquially known by other names. But that is its official title.
Thank you, Chairman. The proposal is for the change of use from use class A1 to use class D1.
Wrong report.
No, wrong. I've actually gone and written the whole completely the wrong.
This is alteration to shop front, shelter overside and associated works.
Yeah, okay, I'll just talk
We'll do some photos.
Apologies, I'll just talk you through the photos. Oops, the site is there. The application seeks planning permission for alteration to the shop front, relocating the main entrance and a side extension providing it was.
Still is.
Whilst the proposed alterations to the shop front would be an enhancement from the existing, the proposed extension is not considered to detrimental impact on the character of the existing building and adjoining listed terrace or the wider street scene, including Morford Way Conservation Area. Furthermore, the proposal would not impact on the amenity of the adjoining neighbours. However, the proposals would be detrimental to highway and pedestrian safety, as previously we had. The railings are proposed to be removed this time. So whilst that addresses
those railings have gone, they're out. They're local authority railings. They no longer exist.
Yeah. So whilst these, by removing them, essentially people would be forced into the road, causing a highway and pedestrian safety issue. Just going to the addendum for this item, we do have additional comments from the East Coast Residents Association.
Yeah. We'll leave those there.
Put in verbatim.
We'll leave those there. The key issue with this one, just for absolute member clarity, the officer report deems that the proposed changes to the front and the fascias would be acceptable, but the extension they want down the side, because of the narrow nature of the footpath, in essence, is unacceptable because it is deemed by the highways officers to be detrimental to safety. So, Councillor Hager, as it's...
Yeah, totally agree. I support officers' recommendations. Had a lot of trouble with this in the past anyway, so I'm really pleased that we're putting this through, especially the pedestrian safety. So,
Thank you. You're going to second, are you?
I will second it.
Quietly.
Thank you. Very quietly.
All those in favour of refusal, please show me. Thank you. That one's refused. Thank you all for your time. 9:15.